We're looking at the top 6 rare earth element companies on the ASX, the top 6 momentum performers over the last quarter. We look at momentum because we can identify what's happening with momentum leaders and profit from them as momentum traders. The best performers, they're up over 100% for the month and 200% for the year. So rare earth elements, there's a great opportunity there as momentum traders to find it. When we're looking at these companies, we understand that they're pulling stuff out of the ground, minerals they're pulling out, and there's a whole plethora of rare earth elements that fit that classification. The interesting thing is that classification varies depending on who you speak to. Academics, industry standards, there isn't really one fixed list of rare earth elements. However, we can look at the critical minerals that the UK, US, European Union have that are critical to their sovereignty and their future 10, 20, 30 years. Their ability to defend themselves is really what it's coming down to. The rare earth elements are used significantly in high technology things like jets, spacecraft, and also smartphones. So when we look at this, the classification of rare earth elements, we understand it could be a multiple different ways, but to our point, we're just going to look at the companies that have minerals within those classifications, and generally that's the critical minerals. We're going to see a large crossover with titanium as well as rare earth elements, depending on which net you cast for the classification. Now, the top 6 companies have performed exceptionally well, and we can see their performances over 100%, 200% in the last month. We've got a list here on the screen, and we can see 123% for energy transition, and for the year, we've got PTR up 224%. So when we look at these companies, we can see energy transition. What are they? What do they do? Well, they include lithium and rare earths in what they're pulling out of the ground and what they're attempting to. So they have a project, and that's over in Denmark and Greenland. But as you can see, there's arbitration proceedings, and there's a contestation over exactly what the royalties, rights, and ownership looks like. So that does make for a quite volatile time. However, they have had a fair bit of news in recent times and a speeding ticket on the 3rd of January. If we look at the price chart of it, we can see, pulling ETR up on the daily chart, we can see that that really goes hyperbolic with their movements. This is sort of a trawling out of a saucer or a baiting pattern that we're consistently looking at for momentum leaders. And then it flicks up a bit of a saucer and a handle if you want to drill into that kind of thing. And then explosive movement with high volume. Yes, that's been quite recent. So you can see that the move in the last month, 100%, last week, 41%, more than the year because they are down for the year. Second place, GCM. Now, interesting, you're going to see they are definitely rare earth element exposure, but they have a strong focus on graphite and HVD. So we'll look at that in a second for its graphite production. So the Macintosh, that's their main key project. That's graphite, but they also have a few other ones, and the Northern Territory project does have rare earth exposure. So we're sort of blurring the lines here. We can see in the announcements that rare earths hasn't actually been pushing them higher. It's been titanium. That is a common theme within those who are pulling rare earth out at the same time. So their extensive REE enrichment, rare earth element enrichment, and drilling at North Barkley projects. So I've got a couple of highlights. This is where their rare earth element project is, but we're going to see they've had significant progress on their construction of their VHD tech pilot plant. This is a crossover with showing the demand for the critical minerals and how that has helped buoy the rare earth element space, but it does cross over into titanium, which is critical but not rare, if we're going to use those specific terms. It is quite interesting because it tells us sort of the market and the industry application. The pilot plant, well, it's designed specifically for heat sinks in the high-performance computing sector, gaming computers, supercomputers, AI data centers, and also goes to solar thermal energy storage systems. What is it? This black box here really tells us VHD, so very high density graphite. That's the applications for it. And once again, there's a nice slide here. Why use it? Well, they've got data centers, AI supercomputers, electronics, automotive application, electric vehicles, batteries, solar thermal energy storage. So that's the market application. Everybody understands the demand and drive for it. Overlay that with the critical minerals that's coming from US, Europe, and Australia for their focus on being able to strengthen supply chains is probably a diplomatic way of looking at it. But that has been a key component. We're going to see that repeated just once more with the next one. So MTM has been a lot of talk on this one because it has hit the launchpad, has run as a momentum leader. We see this goes back towards August, so definitely into that quarterly component, and has been ticking on these lists on and off for quite some time. But explosive movements here. There is a critical thing with MTM that's a little bit different on their flow of news, which we do know from looking at the model books in great detail. The amount of flow or news flow coming from a mining company or development and updates does actually help push a share price along. We saw it with Spartan Resources as a great example. We'll put a link to that video down below if you want to learn more about the market's best leaders over the last 5 years and how to identify them, because there's a consistent pattern that comes showing up all the time. Anyway, NTM, well, their incumbent rare earth element extraction methods rely on energy-intensive acid baking and water-heavy processes that generate significant waste and environmental impact. MTM, they've got a solution for this. That's helped push their share price along. So that's the focus that they have on the rare earth element space. And we do understand that, quoting the CEO, Michael Walsh, we're going to paraphrase here, urgent need to reduce the reliance on Chinese rare earth element supply chains. MTM is well positioned to provide a critical alternative. And you can see this announcement coming through 8th of January. It does help work with the share price and also driving the momentum that they've already had going since August, which brings back to the point of what a momentum leader looks like. They have a lot of consistent news, particularly when they're in this cutting edge space. If they're a standard boring industrial that we have analyzed as well, but can be momentum leaders, they generally don't have many market updates. But look at the dates here. We can see a huge amount of information coming through. January updates, December updates, and then a lot of insider buying when they have the cessation of listed options. So quite often when they expire, that's when people pay up and then put the money to convert options into equity. So we can have a lot of change here, but it does show that it's positive that it's being taken up by the option holders. There's also been placements and trading hold. So positive news consistently coming to market, and that does help push the share price along. 47% move over the month, 140 for the quarter, but they are down a little bit in comparison over the last year, but really powering over the last quarter. Fourth place, PTR, 167% rise over the quarter and 224% over the year. Coming out of a base, very low volume being traded and very difficult to trade as a momentum trader, until they get to this point where they have what Gary Glover refers to as that, or the episodic pivot or a buy will gap up, huge volume, massive movement on positive news. There's a lot of analysis in that, whether it's a swan, a duck, or a chicken. Different video completely on how to trade those. But they have set up and created a high and tight flag with 100% massive gains, more than 100% return to create the flag call, congesting more, well and truly above the halfway line, so in the top half, and then popping out. Ideally, we'd want to see a bit more volume on that pop out, so probably not surprising to see it fade back into the breakout point just now. Could spend a couple of 2 or 3 months. We know from analysing those model books once more, this can be sort of 6 to 8 weeks is pretty standard. 2 to 5 months is not unheard of for a market leader to have an explosive movement like this and then tread water. Albeit volatile, but generally tread water before breaking a new high. So that can happen with a lot of the market leaders. But we're going to look at PTR because titanium is their key focus here. And critical minerals is on the list for Australia, the US, and the EU because it has uses in electric vehicles, battery storage, wind or wind technology, pigments, and as an alloy in steel and super alloys. So also think of ballistic missiles through to spacecraft, aircraft. This fits into the critical minerals, but not necessarily the rare earths for most of the classifications. Titanium isn't included in that. But quite often, titanium can be found in the similar parts of the world where we see mineral sands that are also extracting rare earth elements. We've got a great pitch there. Looks quite boring. That's what mineral sands sites can look like before, when they're sort of a virgin site before the exploration really gets digging and the mining process takes place. To take that extension further for the market demand of these mineral sands, rare earth elements, and titanium. So it's United States, European Union, India, Japan, South Korea, and the United Kingdom all have titanium in their critical mineral list. So not rare earth elements, but quite often they're found at the same time in the same place, which is why this list has a huge crossover of those with titanium exposure. There's that picture of mineral sands down in South Australia. Moving into the next one, IPX is a familiar name for those who have traded in this space for quite some time. A good look at this congestion here. So we're talking about 4 or 5 months of just treading water before breaking new highs. It has definitely happened. Zooming out to see it over a couple of years. See sort of the explosive movement here, treaded water, broke out, failed, pushed back, and then ended up shirting for a couple of years there. Still volatile, but then has broken out, consolidated once more for about 3 or 4 months, and then kicked on to where it is now. So IPX, 15% move over the month, 38% for the quarter, and 128% over the last year. Remembering the year is really our focus as momentum traders. We look at the daily charts more often than most others. IPX, we're focusing on the titanium age. So they say they're becoming a leader in American titanium metal and critical minerals. If anyone's listened to Donald Trump's tweets, being physically in the United States is a huge draw card. We've seen it before, and also when Joe Biden announced his critical minerals and the Inflation Reduction Act, that also had a positive uplift from a lot of the ASX-listed companies that had US exposure. Going back a few years, but the pattern repeats itself. History doesn't repeat, it rhymes. Nonetheless, critical minerals. Now, the exposure for IPX has titanium, zircon, and rare earth elements, all of which exist in abundance in their Titan project. So that's IPX's exposure. Moving to the 6th place from a momentum perspective, the score for the month, BRE, Brazilian Rare Earths, no points for guessing what that company does and where it is, 18% move over the month and 40% rise over the year. 6th place, but when I look at BRE on the chart, we'll see the sort of movements that they had. This is the momentum uplift, and you get them ranked 6th within the rare earth element list on the ASX. So we have dozens of companies that do have exposure to it, but these are the top 6 momentum-wise. Brazilian Rare Earths, Tier 1 rare earth element province, northeastern part of Brasilia. They've discovered numerous rare earth deposits across their province, and this is their exposure to them. Their move was not as strong as the others. Obviously, more news and updates does help buoy investors' interest in it. But this is critical of looking at the market leaders. We need to understand what the best companies are doing from a performance perspective, and time again, we'll see that same thematic arise, which is why on Thursdays and Fridays, we share a list with those who will join as members, and then the public videos on a Friday where we discuss the top 30 momentum companies and the launchpad leaders, which is this sort of movement here before they break out and flick into the momentum. This is where they show up in the launchpad.